Hey, it's Maddie, and welcome to Estate Sale, baby. How has your week been? How's it been going? Are you ready for actual Halloween day? I cannot believe it is Halloween this week. It's absolutely insane. Thank you so much for all of the positive feedback I got on the episode last week. I'm really glad you guys enjoyed it. Today, we're going to be talking about etiquette at estate sales, and we're going to dive into pricing, which I know you guys are really interested in, so that's going to be really fun. Next week's episode, I want to answer some questions that you all have about estate sales and just maybe even general anything questions that you'd like. So if you have any questions you want answered, please email Maddie@MaddieBrandon.com. Once again, it's Maddie@MaddieBrandon.com. That's my email for anything you guys need or want. And hopefully we'll get some good questions and we'll have a lot of fun next week. Before we get into etiquette, I did want to talk a little bit about something I did last week, which is that I was invited to go to the designer preview of the Mid-Atlantic Antique Show out at Aix La Chapelle Farm, which is a farm out in Poolesville, Maryland. And the farm, first off, is stunning. Stunning. I could not, when I walked in, I was like, this is a movie. I could not believe it. It was gorgeous. It was very and a little Washington to me. It was just, flawless. It was incredible. And the Mid-Atlantic Antique Show, I believe, is probably the first antique show I've ever been to. I think I was at antique shows when I was a kid, but this is the first one I've ever been to as a fully formed adult. And the antique show was crazy. It was so cool. The whole farm was just packed full of all these vendors, and I got to talk to them and get some history behind some of the pieces. If you ever go to an antique show, definitely ask the people running that booth, the antique vendor or dealer, some of the history behind some of the pieces, because it's absolutely fascinating. They are as obsessed with just the origin of things and what they are as I am, and it was so cool learning about some of the pieces. On top of that, I was so blown away by just the curation of everybody's little areas. I just think that it is so inspiring when you see just beautifully curated setups, and they're doing it, part of it obviously is to sell the items, but also it just feels beyond that. It's they're doing it just to have this beautiful setup. And I just think that's incredible. So cannot recommend that enough. I'm going to be posting a video of that experience this week because they're actually having another market this weekend, the Old Line Market, which will also be at Aix La Chapelle Farm. And basically what I was told is that this one will have some of the same vendors as last week's market, but it will have slightly more vintagey vendors than antique vendors. So last week was kind of the high-end antique market, but this weekend it's going to skew some of the same vendors and then some more vintagey ones. So I think you guys will really enjoy that. So if you're looking for something to do this weekend, it's kind of my version of going to a pumpkin patch now. Why would I go to a pumpkin patch when I could go to this beautiful autumn farm with, estate sale vibes? Just incredible. Okay, so etiquette at estate sales. I think this is a super fun topic. When I first started making videos of estate sales, I had a lot of lifetime estate sale goers tell me that I really needed to make a video on etiquette, because the more crowded these estate sales would get, the less it felt like people really had the etiquette portion down, which I think is very harsh and probably not 100% true, but I think it's kind of funny. So the first thing on my list is not to argue with the people working at the estate sale. I think that's a pretty no-brainer, and I don't actually think that anybody watching this would do that, but I have been in a lot of awkward situations at estate sales where it'll just be a lot of arguing with people who work there. And, you just got to remember, they're just people too. They're probably not trying to, screw you over or whatever. When I preview estate sales, sometimes teams of people have been there for multiple days, just tirelessly working on going through a large collection of items and curating them and pricing them. It's pretty hard work. So, just keep that in mind when you're talking to people. I think also when there's large crowds of people, it can be just hard to kind of manage everybody. Just regular, people stuff. Just don't be mean to people. I've seen some pretty bad behavior, especially when you're at the cash register and there's just a lot of arguing ultimately, the people working the estate sale, they get to make the calls in terms of how much something is or what you're allowed to do or not do. So you just need to keep that in mind. Also, if you're nicer to them, they're probably going to possibly be nicer to you, which could mean potentially more deals or more help or whatever you need. And along those lines, the next piece of etiquette, in terms of negotiating, there are some estate sale companies that will have a little sign that says, "We do not negotiate." I can think of one that comes to mind. And then there's some estate sale companies that will say, "We negotiate, price is flexible." So you kind of have to like read the room a little bit. You can always try to negotiate on a price, but once the people working the estate sale are like, "No," that's a no. You just, you don't want to get too upset about it. The next piece of etiquette is not to block driveways at estate sales. And I know that's like very specific, but I will explain. So first off, estate sales, generally they're at people's houses. You're kind of entering the neighborhood of someone, and a lot of times it's a lot of cars. You just don't want to like upset the neighbors. The estate sale companies usually will post signs of like where not to park, but it can get sometimes a little out of hand. And I have seen people block driveways of neighbors and stuff, and that obviously makes them very angry. And the story I have is that one time I was at this estate sale, and the estate sale was pretty full of people. It was a good estate sale. They had a lot of art. They had a lot of just random stuff. It's one of my favorite bathrooms I've ever seen. But anyway, I was on the first floor, and this lady comes like flying into the estate sale, and she starts screaming. And the whole estate sale goes quiet. Like we're all just kind of looking at each other and being really quiet because it was very tense. And the lady's screaming, and she's like, "You run trash. This is trash." Like all this stuff. And we were like, oh my God. And like the estate sale employees, like, "Let me know what you need. What are you talking about?" Like all this stuff. And she's like, "Someone here blocked the driveway, and my son couldn't get a sandwich before practice." And I was like, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny to be screaming about that. But anyway, it is still obviously obnoxious to have it where, you live somewhere and all of a sudden you can't get out of your driveway. She was very upset and she left. And that kind of goes back to etiquette 1, which is, be nice to people who work at estate sales. Maybe she could have gotten some good deals if she had been nicer to her. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, yeah, I thought that was kind of insane. But I do see it all the time. I'll see people block driveways and stuff. The next piece of etiquette, which we sort of talked about in the first episode, is not to shop off of the hold table. It's pretty disrespectful. I've seen it happen before, either intentionally or unintentionally. Don't shop off that table. Somebody's already claimed it. Yeah, that's just a good piece of etiquette if you were unaware. The next one is to give people space and not crowd them. And I say it's not that serious on my notes. I think this is a good one for me because I really get a little bit claustrophobic sometimes, and I don't like people being really in my space. And sometimes, you're just in these like small bedrooms and stuff, and you just really don't want someone just like breathing on you, which will happen. I think people get really excited sometimes, and they'll just be like a little too eager and will kind of hover over you. Usually I'll try to wait to go into a room if it's already a little bit busy and it's smaller. So I think just like small things like that, just again, sort of like not getting too excited, not feeling like you're missing out, and just kind of like hovering over people is a good reminder. So, you just want to make it like, again, a pleasant shopping experience, as I said in the first episode. The next piece of etiquette is not to show up at a sale the day before it opens. And sometimes I'm previewing sales and I will hear people try to either get into the house or just like walk into the house the day before. And I think sometimes it's unintentional, and I think occasionally sometimes people are trying to like actually go to the sale early. And I think the only caveat to this is that some estate sale companies will put out a sign-up sheet like the night before a sale. So if you do want to put your name on that sign-up sheet the night before rather than the morning of, you could be earlier on the list. Hopefully that makes sense, but some people will do that. But, don't be annoying. Don't try to like get into the sale the day before. The last piece of etiquette is to remember that an estate sale is the sale of somebody's collection, some person's collection. And just, when you're in someone's home, just to be a little bit mindful of that. I have heard firsthand from some estate sale companies that it just comes off a little rude sometimes when people are like walking around and loudly commenting and making fun of somebody's things. So I think it's good to remember that. Sometimes there are family members at sales also. So just imagine if, someone just passed away and then someone is now in their home and is like making fun of some of the stuff that they had. That would be pretty infuriating to me. So you just kind of want to be kind. I think obviously sometimes there's funny stuff or whatever. It's like fine to, make some comments to your friends, but you just don't want to be like overdoing it where people can hear and be upset about it. That's just kind of a general thing. I've definitely seen it before where people are just like openly making fun of someone's house, which I guess like I always feel pretty privileged to be in someone's house, and I try, even when I'm trying to be funny, just be on the kinder side, because I never want someone to be like, hey, I saw your video, that's my mom. Like, why did you say that about my mom? You know what I mean? I don't know. That's just good to remember. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about is pricing. And I don't necessarily think that I can cover everything I want to say about pricing in just this little segment, but I did want to start talking about it because I know it's very interesting to you guys. Like, I hear feedback all the time to want to know more about pricing. So the first thing I'll say is just like basic level pricing for estate sales to me is fascinating, because generally estate sales are this like limited time event, and usually they're trying to get rid of stuff in that limited time. There's a couple of exceptions to that. Sometimes estate sales are more downsizing sales, so there's a little bit maybe more flexibility about stuff being kept or put on consignment somewhere or donated or whatever. Or sometimes sales are so big, they'll have a second part to them. And usually if they're that big that they have a second part, they're a little bit more open to pricing things not as low, because they might not be trying to move as much stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. I can kind of now look at a sale, and based off of the estate sale company running the sale and based off of like the volume of the selection, I can kind of get a gauge of like what the pricing might be like. And I hear a lot of feedback that estate sale pricing can be expensive. And I think that's interesting, because I think at any estate sale, you can find something affordable. And a lot of times, at a very, very high end sale, you can find smaller items for a good price. So those are just a couple like preliminary thoughts on pricing. I also think obviously those bigger sales generally that are less curated, more of the rummage sale like we talked about on the last episode, those are great sales to get deals at. I got all of my Christmas ornaments from an estate sale, and it was a more rummagey sale, and they were really trying to get everything out of the house. So I was in the basement and opened like a box of ornaments, and I think I bought them for like $10, and there were a lot of mercury glass, like these beautiful ornaments. Again, also, you're going to get the best deals towards the end of the sale when they're really looking to move a lot of the items. So on the last day, they really want to just get stuff gone, so they might give you a better deal. I think also in terms of negotiating, a lot of people ask me, like, how should I negotiate? And my tactic is that unless it says explicitly not to negotiate, which some estate sale companies, it'll say, like, do not negotiate. Unless it doesn't say that, I will always offer a different price, especially if I'm buying multiple items. So that's kind of like a trick. Like one time I bought these really beautiful like crystal cookie plates for last Christmas, and I bought maybe 4 of them, and instead of each one being 20, I was like, I'll give you, 50 for all 3 of these. I don't remember the exact price. I think it was less than that. But anyway, I'll give you a lesser price to buy all 3 of these, and they were like, absolutely yes. So I think you can always offer a price as long as they're up for negotiating. And especially when you're buying multiple items, I highly recommend like offering a price. And again, if they say no, it's a no. So you just have to kind of move on. Some companies actually encourage negotiating in the DC area at least. So you'll want to like throw out your actual price on an item, even if it is less than that on like the price tag, which I know is a little bit confusing. Like there's sort of different decorum based off of the estate sale company, but you'll just want to like look around for those no negotiating signs, because I have found that the companies that do not want to negotiate, they will state it and make it like expressly clear even at the sale. Well, that's a little bit on pricing. I hope that gives a little bit more information on it. Obviously, I could talk about it like for hours, and it's a little bit complex because it does vary based off of the situation and what kind of sale it is and who's running the sale, but I hope that helped. Well, this has been another episode of Estate Sale Baby. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you really liked it. Wherever you're listening or watching to this, if you can give it a review, preferably a good review, that would be great. If not, whatever. This is really exciting stuff, and I hope you learned stuff, and I really look forward to hearing your questions for next week's episode. I'm very excited for that. So I'll see you next Thursday. Thanks so much. Bye.